everybody. Just waiting to let people in.
Welcome, welcome. Enjoy the music. We always do.
It's your Monday morning dance move, Blair.
That's right. That's right. I'll come up with a better one. We'll give a few more minutes for folks to join before we get started.
All right, the music is fading.
Fading, that's right. That's our cue.
Welcome to McKinsey Unpacked. For those of you joining, welcome from sunny Amsterdam. I'm Marie.
And I am Blair in equally sunny Washington, D.C. today. We are so excited to have you with us for every one of these episodes, but today is a special one in particular. We started this a year ago
to
give folks
celebrating.
That's right. That's right. To give folks a bit of an insider's view to who we are as a firm, meet our colleagues, hear about a bunch of the things that we work on together to give you a real sense of what it's like to work at McKinsey. So we're excited to invite you. We have a great episode planned for today. But Marie, what's our special news? What's our anniversary today?
Well, I mean, we have a really amazing episode for our first year anniversary, which is hard to believe that it's already been a year since we've been running this and that they still let us do this, that they still
let us do this. The fact that we get people to come back, that's the amazing part. That's right.
Exactly. And in case you're wondering, like, what? This has been going on for a year. How could I have missed it? We will share out afterwards a link to a website where you can knock yourself out and listen to all the previous 10 or so episodes that you've missed over the last 12 months. So we hope you will visit us there. So as Blair said, our aim with this show, we still don't quite know how to call it, but with this show...
We'll call it a show. I think a show makes us sound very fancy. It's a show.
To give you a glimpse behind McKinsey, who we are as a firm, what type of people work here, what we really care about. And one thing McKinsey cares about a lot is structure, and we always think in 3s or 5s. So also our show has 3 different elements that we cover every week, giving you a little bit of an idea where we're heading in today's map. All of our themes have a little twist on travel, given that our consultants work shoulder to shoulder with our clients, and that very often also involves actually going to our client side and sitting with our clients to help them solve their most difficult challenges. The heart of the show is the Unpacked session, where per episode we have a different themes that we dive deeper into, and then finally we always wrap up with a little snack for the road. Blair and I both have children, not so young anymore, but still with us, living at our houses. And for any good trip, you need definitely some food. So we end with snacks on the road.
That's right. That's right. And food, you'll also discover about McKinsey, we like things in 3s, and there is always food involved. So I actually just got back from our North America Summer Conference, which we had over the end of last week and a bit of the weekend, where we brought all of our summer interns together, which was really special and a lot of fun, and there was a lot of food. So that was one comment we got, is you guys really like to eat at every turn. So Marie, maybe we should dive in, because I know we've got a couple great speakers and a great topic, but let's start with today's map. What is on your mind today?
Yeah, so I think it's anniversary, right? For multiple reasons. What we said at the beginning, our show is turning 1 this month, which is exciting. Hooray. On a personal side, I don't know how that ended up, but all my family's birthdays fall between the end of May and early July. So while I love my own personal birthday, and the fun fact is that you and I share a birthday on the same day.
Marie and I share a birthday. It's true. It's true.
Same day. I'm always happy.
That was not a requirement for us to have this role, by the way. That was not part of the screening nor assessment, but in fact, it is.
I don't know.
It is a true fact.
What about you, Blair? I'm always happy when everybody else's birthdays is over and I can, not think about presents and birthday parties for a year. And then an even more exciting reason is that one of our guest stars has his birthday today. I don't
That's
think
right.
we'll attempt a live happy birthday on on today's session, but that is of course very fun. So birthday and anniversary is on my mind very much, and of course an anniversary of our little show here is a good time to reflect on the last 12 months and what we might want to change as we go forward. I don't know, Blair, what reflections you've had thinking back on how this has evolved and started and developed.
Yeah, I mean, besides sharing your amazement that they continue to allow us to do this for 12 months is pretty amazing. I think the thing that I am most proud of, if I can say that, is the access that we've given people. I think, and that's a bit of what we're going to talk about today, but this idea that there are so many institutions that seem out of reach or seem somehow secretive, or you have to be a member of the club to sort of understand it or be a part of it. And one of the things I love most about our firm is the fact that we are a diverse meritocracy. We'll talk about what that means, but we're a pretty inclusive place. And I love that this series for us has been a way, I hope, to open the doors of McKinsey a little bit and share who we are and give everybody access to understand a little bit more, not only about who we are as a firm, but all the cool topics that we work on along the way. So I have had folks, in fact, at the conference that I was at this past week, I had people come up to me and say, you know, I sort of never thought I'd be here. I never thought I was the kind of person that McKinsey would hire as an intern, and here I am. And I love that. I hope episodes like this help open people's minds and open the doors to say we are wildly excited about people from very different paths and backgrounds. That's actually what makes our firm so special. So for me, that's the thing I think I'm most proud of is I hope we've given a glimpse of McKinsey to many people who thought they wouldn't have a chance to get a glimpse behind the scenes at McKinsey. So I'm excited about that, Marie.
Yeah, I agree. Me too. Looking ahead, one thing that we always feel bad about is that there are always so many questions, and we somehow,
Yes.
it's always a little difficult with our guest stars. We don't have that much time or no time to answer questions. So that's why that's one of the changes that we want to make going forward is occasionally build in episodes where we just bundle all the questions that we've received from all of you and answer some of those to make this really as helpful as possible to everybody.
Yes, and so stay tuned. It's a reason that's your incentive to join a future episode to see if we can crack that nut and figure out how to ensure that you're always provocative and interesting questions, that we actually have some time to answer them as well. But I want to make sure, Marie, I feel like, as always, we can talk and we can talk
exactly.
forever.
Let's dive in.
But let's dive in, because we are really excited to introduce you to our two guests. And I mentioned earlier this concept of diverse meritocracy. This is one of the defining factors of who we are as a firm. And it's the concept that everybody can thrive here and contribute here, that we actually believe from a scientific perspective, we put teams together of people who have very different views, backgrounds, life experiences. That's the point. And our own research shows, in fact, that our teams produce better answers when we bring diverse thinkers and people leaders together. And frankly, the experience of our colleagues and our clients is better as well. So we want to talk about today what it means to be a diverse meritocracy, and in fact, do a bit of a deep dive on some very important research. Marie, I know you've been part of this research in Europe in particular around social mobility and how that is really affects our ability to be a diverse meritocracy, and what we can do as a firm, and frankly, what other companies can do to promote social mobility as a social good, and frankly, as a business good as well, as something that is actually good for business, not just good for society. We have two wonderful guests with us today, Peter and Ferry. Let's get you out of the shadows and into the spotlight.
This is a first for us, right? For our
That's
first
right.
anniversary, that we have for the first time two guests.
That's right. That's right.
He is a fellow partner in our Amsterdam office, and he's been with McKinsey for 21 years already, serving telecom organizations. He's also one of our Prism leaders in Europe, and Prism is the network where we bring together a community of colleagues that come from socioeconomic underprivileged backgrounds. And I guess I have to thank you also personally, Ferry, because you interviewed my husband many years ago, and got him into McKinsey. And via McKinsey, I met him because I'm originally German and he's Dutch. And that's why I ended up in the Netherlands. So I guess I have to also personally thank you for many things. But great to have you.
And Ferry's birthday is today.
Yes,
Ferry,
it's
it's
Ferry's
your birthday.
birthday.
It's our birthday.
You should have a little hat.
Turning really old today, yes.
Yeah. Seasoned, Ferry. That's what we like to call seasoned. You're very seasoned today, which is great. Thank you for joining us on your birthday, Ferry. That's an extra treat. We also have Peter with us. Peter is a partner in our London office. Hi, Peter. He's been with the firm for over 7 years. Most of his work focuses on sustainability. And a couple different kinds of client work specifically that Peter is engaged in. The first is businesses trying to scale up green solutions. So helping them figure out how to scale sustainable value propositions, but then also on the funding side, working with banks and other funding sources to help make these businesses successful. So Peter and Ferry, welcome to both of you. We are so excited to have you here.
Great. So Ferry, maybe we can start with you. You've been, as I said, at McKinsey already for quite some time. Maybe you can share a bit about your journey, what has led you to McKinsey and what has kept you for so many years.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. And I'm born in a small town close to Amsterdam. In a warm, what do we call, a social democratic nest. My parents were socialists, trying to bring people up through education, because my parents were both hairdressers. I told the story before that my mom and dad met in a hairdresser saloon. Later, my father became a carpenter, and after he got laid off, he became a mailman. So McKinsey wasn't really in the cards when I grew up. I went to university, joined one of those big logo clients. So you can look at my LinkedIn. It's Shell, because that's what you do. Wasn't very successful at Shell, or didn't really feel at home. Then I started my own company, which failed miserably. And then a headhunter said, "What? You seem to be the perfect guy for McKinsey." That sounded a bit weird, but so I never thought about joining McKinsey. And when I started working corporate, I heard about them, of course. And also when I had my own company, they were the thought leader. So I was actually very excited to interview here. And I got hired, to my own surprise. Maybe given at low expectations, the interviews went very well. And then why did I stay at McKinsey? I think two things. One is, and this sounds very slogany, which is make your own McKinsey. And I made my own McKinsey several times. I started out here. I had a bit of time. It took me a bit of time to adjust to this place. It was all new to me. I didn't really know consulting. As I described, I've never really been out for dinner, and now I had a bunch of team dinners and stuff. So a lot of things I had to learn being at McKinsey. And to be honest, it was hard for me, but the people around me at McKinsey were very nice at doing that. But my first part of McKinsey is just fitting in and learning the skills. But after that, I was really excited about telecommunications, because I studied telecommunications, and I started building a bunch of telecommunication businesses, first in the Netherlands and then globally. I worked in South Africa, I worked in Russia before the war, I worked in Malaysia to build telecommunication businesses. And then the next McKinsey was actually moving with my family to another country. So we moved to Singapore. I have 3 kids with my wife, did that for 5 years. And then since I moved back, I decided to follow the passion. I want to build a global new business. And I'm now 5 years in. We have a couple of 100 million of revenue. So we're actually building that. So it's very exciting that you can do that. The second is, and I won't talk too much about your husband, but really working with talented young people, because it's so much fun to 9 out of 10 times I'm the dumbest on the team. That's what I always say, because especially young people recruit with fantastic analytic skills, with fantastic design skills, really know how to operate. So every day I get challenged, also by my clients, because they're listening. No, my clients are most important, but especially by the people we work with, because they got fantastic ideas. And Peter and I, we built this report together, and then you basically have a problem solver, as you call it, and then the ideas they have on how to get to data and how to do things, super inspiring. So it's build the thing you want to build, and secondly is do it with fantastically fun people, and of course amazing clients. So that's my journey.
I love that.
Thank
Peter,
you.
how about you? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Happy to. So look, my story's a little bit shorter than Ferry's, but like Ferry, I was also the first to go to university in my family. My parents were real champions of social mobility, and they really instilled in me the importance of education, invested lots of time in helping with my homework and driving me a long way to get to good schools. And I ended up studying engineering, and I worked in industry for about 5 years, but I did an interesting program that involved doing a PhD part-time alongside my day job. And my research spent time looking at the role that data can play in shaping cities and making them better places for everyone, how it can make it easier for more people to take public transport, how energy systems can run more efficiently, how we can better engage people in the design of kind of public spaces. And from there, I kind of gradually moved into sustainability more broadly. And like Ferry, I never thought I would end up at a strategy consultancy. But as part of my PhD interviews, I was very lucky to speak to the senior partner who runs all of McKinsey's cities practice. And it was dropped into conversation that I might find the kind of sustainability work that McKinsey does rewarding. So I applied, and here I am. And I still spend some of my time working with clients who are really focused on urban areas. But as you say, I also spend an increasing amount of my time in the energy transition. And as you say, that's kind of divided up between two areas. So part of it is around those companies who have decarbonization technology. Particularly, I specialize in what we might call the harder to abate emissions. So things like carbon capture and storage or carbon removal. And I support those in scaling up these new businesses. And again, this is getting an increasingly interesting investment. So I also support a lot of investors to think about which of these are worth backing and kind of making sure that the funding is also flowing. That's my story so far.
Very
Thank
cool.
you.
That's a good story.
It is actually, both of you touched on a point that we hear a lot of from candidates, that nobody grows up wanting to be a management consultant, and that it was a coincidence.
Well, there might be a few, but those people are
my children are quite keen on joining McKinsey one day because they hear about all the great snacks that we have. So they're very food focused.
We do have good snacks.
A bit younger. Let's see if that changes. But most of it is by accident or coincidence, or you meet somebody who tells you about it. So that's just maybe an encouragement actually for anybody thinking through, well, already now about McKinsey because you're listening to us today. But that's always advice for everybody, to just talk to many people, understand what's out there, to see where your talents might fit best and where you can see the biggest development opportunities for yourself.
That's right. And that this place gives you an opportunity to have, we say, impact, which is a word that I think matters a lot to us. Sounds a little bit maybe high level to the outside world, but I hope the topic today will give you a sense of what we mean when we talk about impact. And both Peter and Ferry, I think, have been very dedicated to helping us around this topic of social mobility, which maybe is where we should start. Ferry, maybe you could help us for the uninitiated. What is actually social mobility? How do we think about that? Why does it matter? And in particular, maybe you could tell us a little about the current state of social mobility in Europe, which I know is where you all have focused.
And when we talk about social mobility, we are basically talk about the ability of people to grow up the career ladder or progress regardless of the background they have. So that's the basics of it. And what we found, and to be honest, Peter is here being a pioneer in the UK to basically launch Prism and basically say, hey, even though we in Europe, and we are the champions in social mobility. So Europe, although America has the name of the American dream, Europe has actually a better place to be for social mobility. Even there, over the last 10 years, social mobility has stalled. So we started out with the fact, hey, we had a good track record, and now it's stalling a bit. And why it's so exciting, I must admit, I was asked by Peter and our managing director for Europe to help lead Prism, is because it's a triple win. Because what we see is that about 1/3 of the people in Europe classify as lower social mobility. I would be one first. Typically, we look at people that which parents have not gone to university. So especially the first generation that go to university or have a higher education. And why I'm so passionate around this topic is, number one, is it's great for the people. You really help people because there's higher unemployment. People often have lower wages because they're overskilled for their job. So if you can fix social mobility, it is fantastic for the person. Then it's also fantastic for the economy, and Peter will talk about that because the report shows that actually once we can help people to maximize their potential, that's also better for the economy because there's more economic growth. We can fill jobs we can't fulfill. And then last, it's great for the employer because the reality is the employer gets great, highly talented people that are more loyal. So when we look at this to say, hey, we're product basically of great social. I'm product of great social mobility in action. The government paid my scholarships. My parents pushed me, but then my father was, as I said, a mailman. My mother was a hairdresser. So the system helped me to get up, and then McKinsey also, of course, helped me develop. And then can we bring that forward to the whole society? Is great for people, great for the economy, and great for the employer.
Agree. And yet, I mean, things have been stalling a little bit in Europe, right? You said, Ferry, in Europe, actually, we have a pretty good base, but things are maybe not progressing at the same speed as they have in the past. Why is that alarming, Peter? Like, what has the research shown in terms of benefits that we forego when we don't solve this?
Yeah, so what was really interesting is that the economic implications are really significant. And I might break it into kind of two main perspectives, which are two of the lenses that we use in the report. So at the societal level, if we can achieve a more meritocratic Europe, which is, as Ferry says, where you come from doesn't necessarily govern the opportunities you have going forward, we think this could result in a GDP boost of around 9%, right? So that's like 1.3 trillion euros. And that's a combination of different factors. So that's reduced unemployment in lower social groups, which is currently about 4 percentage points higher than higher social groups. It is people who do a given education going on to do the same mix of skilled jobs, where at the moment you're something like 1.5 to 3.5 times less likely to do a high skilled job if you're a lower social background than a high social background, even if you've done the same education. And it's thirdly, people progressing through those jobs at the same rate, again, regardless of their social background. We've seen some evidence that in certain professional services firms, lower social background people perhaps progress 25% or so slower for various reasons we can get into. But if you address all those three things, you can make that big GDP impact. The second lens I would then say is kind of the business perspective, right? And today, about 75% of European employers say they find it difficult to fill their roles. And we in the MGI have modeled and foresee that there's likely to be a gap of about 10 million high-skilled jobs in Europe by 2030, which is a combination of kind of increasing need for certain jobs, but also kind of an aging population. What's interesting is if you make those changes we discussed in the previous bucket, there's actually more than enough workers with theoretically the right education from the full spectrum of social backgrounds to deal with that 10 million gap, right? And if we don't start thinking about attracting talent from that wider pool, the jobs won't get filled, and that will impact European competitiveness.
That's the topics that are near and dear to our heart, obviously, in leading global hiring is thinking a lot about how do we make sure that we are matching the right talent and giving the right opportunities for the right talent to have access to the right kinds of roles for them. So that resonates a lot. So clearly massive economic implications as well as labor market implications for getting this right. What's holding us back? Ferry in particular, what are you seeing in Europe? What are the main barriers that are perpetuating this gap that we're facing?
I think there's a couple, and I think one is access to education. We see that people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds have 3 times less educational access, and again there are a lot of that is just more difficult, and we see that also getting to university and good quality education is expensive, and it's difficult. So we basically see that that's a big barrier. The other one, of course, is once you're at university or at high school, or do you get picked up, and what are the outcomes of that? So we often see that there's a wide, if you're coming from a different background, you can't always benefit maximally from the schooling you get. There might be all kind of reasons behind that, but the outcome is widely different from people from a low socioeconomic background when they get certain education. Then it's access to employment opportunities. Do you have the social network? Do you know somebody? I remember I was applying to Shell, and Shell had an extraordinary complicated form you had to fill in. And I happened to, at that point, I do an internship, and I was sitting next to somebody from a large Dutch fraternity who was filling it in. And I said, it's so difficult. He says, I have 19 versions of people from my fraternity that got hired by Shell. Do you want to see some of those? And that just insight of seeing the way people applied really helped me to make and to get confidence that I could do it. So those small things really make a massive difference. So getting access to employment, often you need a bit of social capital to get some advice, to get there. So those are a couple of the factors that basically drive it, and that really drive the outcomes.
Yeah, that is so. I mean, I can so see how that happens, right? That it's like seeing it is believing it. So if you've seen people in your own networks having gone the path, it's not just the information that you might get from people and an advice that you just perfectly described an example of, but it's also just what you said, giving you the confidence that you feel like you can achieve such a career path or such an undertaking. And Peter, you already mentioned a bit, it's also about businesses, right? I mean, sometimes I feel like people think, well, it's a government question, that it's governments that need to fix it, that needs to provide equal access to education, that needs to take care of it. But in our report, right, we wrote a lot also about what businesses can actually do very tactically to overcome this and to give more access and to play a role, especially also in the future of work context, where you already mentioned, look, they have a self-interest in trying to fix that, to be able to tap into the talent that's available in the market to its fullest potential. So what could businesses concretely do? Very practical. I will take my pen and paper to take some notes for our own.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I'm sure there's still some good advice for us out there.
That's right.
So it's interesting, as you say, obviously governments can make a big influence on social mobility, but businesses can have a surprisingly large effect as well. And in our report, we break it down into kind of two parts of the funnel, right? Recruitment, getting talent in the door, and then retention and advancement, helping them reach their potential and grow. And there's a mix of kind of easier things to do and more more bigger investments, longer term things as well. If I kind of think of a few examples in each. So in recruitment, one of the simpler things you can do is switching from unpaid to paid internships, right? We know that people from lower social backgrounds are about 2.5 times less likely to say they can do one of those than a higher social background individual. So you're missing out on a lot of talent from that. You can also adjust CV screening to focus more on experiences than qualifications, right? And there's an interesting law firm that we case study who removed that 2-1 requirement after they realized some of their best performing solicitors didn't actually qualify retrospectively. And so that actually wasn't necessarily helping them find the best people for the job. And then at the kind of other end, you have some people using data in quite sophisticated ways. And we talk about Zero Gravity, which is an example of a charity that uses AI to connect talent from a wider range of social backgrounds to career paths they might not have heard of because of their particular upbringing, and employers who might be interested in this talent but might not have come across them anyway. And the headline is the companies and candidates in their schemes have something like a kind of 2.5 times better application success rate because they've been very carefully paired together. So I think that's interesting. Then on the kind of retention and advancement side, I think one of the most common, simplest solutions is mentorship and sponsorship schemes. They make a big difference. In our survey, we found that you're twice as likely to aspire to progress to a senior leadership position if you're a low social background individual with a mentor. Conversely, you're almost 3 times more likely to say you're unsatisfied with your work if you don't have a good mentor or sponsor. So I think it's kind of two sides to it. And then I think if you think about kind of bigger interventions in retention and advancement, I think skills development programs are interesting. A lot of lower skilled jobs in the workplace today are still disproportionately done by people from lower social backgrounds. And many of those positions are at risk of automation. But at the same time, as we said earlier, there are higher skilled jobs that are growing. And often there can be quite a gap between those jobs that are declining and those jobs that are growing. But the techniques some companies are employing is to do what we call kind of job hops, so skills transitions. So you move from 3 or 4 different jobs where people can move and learn a few new skills at a time, but without complete retraining. So for an example, people have taken customer service reps, a shrinking job, and over 2 or 3 kind of skills transitioned them into a sales manager, a job that pays kind of 6 times as much. And those kind of techniques can help companies make better use of their workforce and also help social mobility.
I like it. And I mean, we've also taken some very tactical changes to our process in terms of really opening up the aperture to allow anybody to get in touch with McKinsey, frankly, and not just going to a select number of schools, which is maybe something we would have done 10 plus years ago or so. Because sometimes also what we found is that if you come from a socioeconomically disadvantaged background, you might not be able to move to a different city because you still have to work at home, or you can't afford to find an apartment by yourself, but you need to stay with your family. We've also started to recognize so McKinsey typically was very excited about the internships that you do, and we still are very excited about awesome work experience people gather, but equally we're also excited to hear if people had to work next to their university degree and had to find different means to support themselves, and that's something we value very much as well. And just reinforcing the message that it's not about your education, it's about what you bring, and that we just look for exceptional people no matter their background and no matter where they've studied or what experience they bring.
Well, and your comments too on networks, right? And that folks from socially disadvantaged backgrounds typically don't have the set of networks that
knowledge
be in much elite schools. That's actually a question we get a lot from all candidates is, do I have to know someone at McKinsey to be able to work at McKinsey? Right. And I don't know anyone at McKinsey. And the answer is a resounding absolutely not, right? We are a merit-based hiring system, which Peter, I loved how you outlined that, which is, look, we're looking for the intrinsic qualities you bring in whatever experience you have. It's not who you know here, et cetera. So we really very much look at networking as entirely for our candidates to get to know us, not a box they need to check and not a route they need to find their way into the firm. But I want to go back.
By the way, I'm guilty. Yeah. I didn't know anybody when I joined. Like nobody.
Nobody. Zero. Great. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I think that's right, Ferry. I think many of us sort of fell into consulting. Again, as Marie said earlier, very, very few of us, woke up one day as a elementary schooler and thought, I think I'm going to be a management consultant. I think that's right, Ferry. That's a great point, that you really don't have to have an internal network. You can build your network when you're here. And something, I love this point on mentorship and sponsorship. We've actually hosted Unpacked series on the power of mentorship and sponsorship, the difference between them. You both mentioned the Prism community that you've both been very involved in Europe. Can you tell everybody a little bit about what the Prism community is, how that potentially helps folks once they're here?
We have a good acronym at McKinsey, so I'm going to test you both. What does Prism stand for?
I didn't even know it was an acronym. Okay, great. There you go. All right.
Do you know it?
I don't know it. I think we've stumped everybody.
So we love good acronyms at McKinsey, and sometimes we don't remember what they stand for. So PRISM stands for Progressing Representation and Inclusion in Social Mobility.
Oh, look at that. Okay, well done, Marie.
You wonder why it's called PRISM. Anyway, over to you again to talk about.
Yeah, we'd love to hear more about what PRISM is as a community, and frankly, maybe what it has meant to each of you and folks who are a part of that community at the firm.
Happy to. Perhaps I'll lay out kind of the structure and purpose of Prism, and then Ferry, please jump in with your extra reflections. So think of Prism as an internal group that works to improve the socioeconomic diversity of ourselves, McKinsey, but also our clients. And we organize ourselves around what we call 4 main pillars. So we have recruiting, where we launch new recruiting techniques to try and attract people from a wider range of backgrounds. A good example of this is our case competition, Solve It, which is designed to attract participants from a much wider range of universities. So we have over 25 in the UK than we've not necessarily historically had as much presence as we should have had. We also have experience in retention, which is where, for example, we run our mentorship schemes to allow people with similar social backgrounds to find a connection they feel they have something in common with, and perhaps kind of learn skills around how to build a network or how to do top-down communication if they may not have had as many opportunities to practice that before coming to the company. Then we have community, which is about kind of running a wide range of events that bring people together on the topic of social mobility, spanning everything from pizza socials to panel discussions with guest speakers. And finally, our research arm, where we produce thought leadership, and is what produced the Europe report that we've been discussing today. Ferry, anything you'd add?
No, I just want to say what is exciting to see is Peter is one of the initiators of this whole thing in the UK and started this out, and now it's a global initiative with the report. So it's one of those examples of build your own McKinsey, this from an idea to basically global initiative now that's very exciting. I think especially the storytelling to the point, every time I speak about this, I always get 10, 15, 20 emails. I also experienced this. So I think even sharing those type of conversations with candidates, but also people internally, is very powerful.
I love that. And I love Ferry.
Sorry, we'd like to. Wait, you go first, Blair.
I was just going to say, Peter is too modest to say that about himself. So Ferry, I'm glad that you gave him that kudos. And I love that as an example, that we say that all the time. It takes one person to have one idea, and we promise somewhere in the firm you can find another person who's passionate about that idea, and then you find another, and then you find another, and suddenly it becomes a thing. So that make your own McKinsey, you're right, it's slogan-y, but it's actually, I think, a very real part of our experience. So I love it.
And I love this one in particular also because you both shared the aspect of community is so important, but you wouldn't necessarily immediately see somebody's background and where they've come from. And some people might not be comfortable sharing it, but then when it takes a few people like yourselves who openly share their experiences, it gets really a lot of people also courage to do the same, and then a feeling of, look, we are in this together. And the hurdles, Ferry, that you described when you joined, that you had never gone to dinners in restaurants, and now all of a sudden you do it all the time. That is something, that is nice when you know who you can maybe turn to and ask questions about. Equally, what I've heard a lot from our Prism members is that this feeling of connection, you lose it a bit with where you come from because your experience has shaped up in a very different way, but you might not also always feel it immediately from the beginning in the places where you enter. So having a group that really shares that journey has been, I think, quite powerful for our Prism members. I see you both nod, so.
Agreed. So what would be some advice that both of you might give to candidates? So they're not part of our Prism community yet, but they're interested potentially in McKinsey. What advice would you give them in terms of how to navigate not just the McKinsey process, if we're lucky enough to have folks interested in us,
but process.
Yeah, exactly. The job market overall. What may be some advice for folks?
Let me start, and Peter, chip in. One is, it's all around the skill. So you need to have a certain amount of skill to do any job. So find a way to get qualified. Now, sometimes that qualification is a fancy university. Sometimes it's a different way to get qualified, but having some of qualification is really important.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first step, but it's not the only thing. So don't over focus on qualification. There is also the aspect of networking, and networking always sounds like, massive. But again, in my case, was the guy sitting next to me who was doing the same application as I was trying to do at the same time. It might be university professor, it might be somebody else, but really take a bit of a risk to share with somebody. Hey, think about my career. I have this type of aspiration. What is your advice? Because remarkably, you will find people that can help you. So those are the two things: build skills and get some certification and qualification. And secondly, is the broader conversations you have, the more opportunities will emerge.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Ferry. And maybe I would just add a bit of emphasis on the second point, right? As well as finding good mentors, do spend time on those connections, right? Check in with them and find things to problem solve together so they feel they can be useful, right? And I similarly agree, do value what you can learn from the experiences of your peers. I think both those things can be a game changer in your career.
I love that. We've talked about that in some of our previous discussions around mentorship and sponsorship, that it's quite easy to sort of see when someone's trying to connect with you to check a box, right? Because they think, oh, that's something I need to do, is I need to make sure I've talked to this many partners or this many senior partners. There is a marked difference between that kind of conversation that feels very transactional and a genuine one, right? So I think we have said in the past, some of our advice is it is quality, not quantity. So try and approach it from a meaningful, genuine growth perspective, which is not only what can I learn from this person, but how can I contribute to them? And so be curious about what they're trying to do. So remember that they are also trying to achieve things, and you can help them. Be genuinely curious and thoughtful about those real connections. So I think,
and some of that takes time as well. We've spoken about that in one of our previous episodes, that some of, like you said, some of these relationships require some fostering. With an eye to the clock, we want to make sure we keep it exciting enough that people, come back. So we don't want to overstay our welcome. So we have arrived at the last part of today's episode, which is the snack for the road. You've already given a bit of an advice point, but maybe you have another insight or takeaway or mantra or quote or whatever that you can leave with our listeners.
You want to kick off, Peter? You want me to kick off?
I'm looking at you. Go for it.
So I always say to my younger consultants, if they want to work in a very exciting field, take the most boring angle to an exciting topic. and what do I mean with that is that if you want to work in AI, talk about very high-level AI strategies. That is not your role as a junior colleague. As a junior person, you need to know something very deep about something. And if it's a topic which is complex, that is difficult, you always be invited for the meeting because nobody else knows it. So I would say don't take the most, and again, sexy or exciting piece, because that's where everybody will flock to. But if you want to, I remember in my career, just the 1 second, I was doing something around 5G, the introduction of 5G. Everybody wanted to do pricing because that was very exciting, and I was doing costing. And so I got invited for every meeting because the costing is pretty boring. It's very important to get it right. So if you're young and new in the field, take something that's hard, put your effort into it, and then you typically get invited to the meeting. So take the boring angle of an exciting topic.
I love that.
I like that
I
one.
love that. Peter, what do you think?
I don't know if I can top that. I think that's very good from Ferry. I mean, I think the only other thing I would just say is like, do back yourself, right? Like, I think the processes can sometimes be intimidating, right? Not everyone you meet, you'll necessarily feel like you have something in common with, but like, stick at it, and believe in your own talent, and I think you can go far.
Thank you.
I love that.
This was great. I mean, like I said, this was an inaugural time where we had 2 guests, but I think, I mean, you tell us please in your feedback surveys if you enjoyed having the 4 of us on today's episode. But thank you so much, Ferry and Peter, for joining us today. It was really amazing to hear your stories and learn more about the insights from the research that we did in Europe. So thank you for taking the time.
And I love the theme. What I heard through many of your comments was about empowerment, right? Which is, how do we empower in a meritocracy everyone to pursue as many opportunities as they can, to build meaningful connections. I love your point, Peter, on see yourself as sort of the captain of your future and stick to it. Ferry, I love your point of pick something, maybe the most boring thing, but pick something that you are the owner of. You are the expert. And I think that, to me, that's so empowering to think about. You can be the most junior person in the room and actually the deepest expert on any topic. And if you have the stick-to-itness, right, there's nothing that can stop you. So I think that's a really empowering message. So huge thanks to both of you for joining us. Ferry, happy birthday. I hope you're going to celebrate doing something other than Zooms and webinars today, I hope.
All right.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all so much for joining us. All right, look forward to the next session. Thanks again, Peter and Ferry. Bye-bye, all. Have a good day.